More moves are coming for the Toronto Blue Jays is following re-signing Max Scherzer. We have some new reports that have dropped revealing the Jays aren't done and more moves are on the horizon. But not only that, we also have tons of other details surrounding Max Scherzer's specific contract and the incentives that have come along with that. But also John Schneider and others revealing the truth behind what the Jays are going to do with their abundance of starters. And it genuinely changes the outlook of how spring training is perceived, but also what their opening day roster, the 26-man roster, is going to look like on March 27th when the season begins. A ton to go over on this episode, folks. But before we get into it all, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Jays content. Folks, ton to go over today. And obviously, we're going to be breaking down a bunch of new information, but more moves are on the horizon, specifically surrounding the future of one player in Eric Lauer that has had a lot of fans very intrigued over the past few days, past few hours. And I want to start with this report from Ben Nicholson-Smith. Now, it specifically talks about how I think it's Eric Lauer who's going to be the one who is moved to the bullpen. He's pretty much going to have to start in the bullpen. Of course, that's after they've been discussing what's going to happen with, of course, the rotation and obviously the bullpen as well after Max Scherzer re-signing with the Jays. And this obviously has brought up a lot of different conversation because we can think back to weeks ago, days ago, Eric Lauer is unhappy with the Toronto Blue Jays, right? It's clear, or at least unhappy with his role. And they signed Max Scherzer. And all of a sudden, if he gets pushed to the bullpen, there's a real world here where he requests some sort of trade. Now, I don't want to go that far yet because at this point, it's very clear that they are going to probably just run it out, ride it out with him and see if he can stay on the team because at the end of the day, there's no certainty in baseball. And there's a very real chance they're going to end up needing Lauer. But you can see here, everyone, including Max Scherzer, have been told as of yesterday that the starting rotation will be set in a very interesting way. Basically, whoever performs the best will, get it. Their performance dictates it. Everyone's a big boy. They understand where we're at. And it's very true, right? At the end of the day here, they got Max Scherzer for a few different reasons, but you're going to have to make a move, right? And the move is probably going to be Eric Lauer to the bullpen, and that, of course, sparks some speculation. You can see this guy under, there's been some rumors, I have to think a Lauer trade is now imminent. The Jays are a class organization, and if he truly only wants to start, there's definitely a market for him, and they will accommodate. And that's the biggest thing. Will the Jays want to accommodate Eric Lauer's request if he wants to trade? He hasn't officially requested one yet, but I mean, we think back to a report from Mitch Bannon from less than a week ago. They both know Lauer wants to start. The rotation will now not have a spot for him, and he was stretching out as a starter. Now he's not really a starter. He's going to go back to the bullpen, according to Ben Nicholson-Smith. It's a crapshoot, and they're going to have to make room on the roster for Max Scherzer anyway, which isn't necessarily going to be as difficult as people think, which I'll dive into in this one. But Max Scherzer is going to need, even if it's a couple months, right, to get ready, Lauer is going to probably be the one who's on the outside looking in. And if ultimately it goes based on performance, I mean, maybe Eric Lauer would probably deserve it. Yes, everyone's a big boy, but will Eric Lauer want to actually remain on the team? Because he is going to be moved to the bullpen. Now, regarding what actual move is going to be coming, they will need a 40-man roster spot for Max Scherzer, but will have no trouble creating one as Jake Bloss and Anthony Santander can be moved to the 60-day IL. So for those talking about you need to trade Eric Lauer, all these things in order to actually, get Scherzer on the team, that's not the case. You have Bloss you can move, and you have Santander. Bloss is probably the easier one, but you can move either one. But it's more so about the tension, the ongoing tension that is going to continue to kind of unveil itself here over the next few weeks as Eric Lauer's role gets maybe more diminished. Now, again, you can see here, if the Jays sign Scherzer, it could make Lauer's path even cloudier, and they could potentially, want to trade him. But they are big boys, and there is a world where they just run with, 8 starters. And there's been a lot of talk lately from John Schneider and others. I'm not saying a Lauer trade is imminent by any means, but some moves are going to continue to be made here. They could still make a trade, all these different things. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to fight for a spot if you are any of the Toronto Blue Jays, starting pitchers. And obviously Scherzer's not accounted for here yet, but you look at the rotation on the right before Scherzer, Cease, Gosman, you Savage, those guys are locks. You have Bieber, probably going to be locks. But beyond that, Cody Ponce, Jose Barrios, Eric Lauer, Max Scherzer. If Eric Lauer and they end up running a 6-man rotation, there's a couple games down the stretch. There's a couple weeks, early in the season where they have a bunch of games in a bunch of days, and they'll probably end up having to use Lauer at some point. But keep an eye out. Is he going to want that to happen? Right? Because reports are that he doesn't, and if he's the one being moved to the bullpen like Ben Nicholson-Smith is implying here, a trade could happen a lot sooner than a lot of fans initially think. And you can look at the quote here everyone that's in their roles on the same page. We all have the same goal in mind. This is basically talking about those tough decisions, those tough conversations about, kind of the hidden elephant in the room here, which is Eric Lauer. I wish I could keep everybody happy. I always say I never have perfect attendance when I come to work. We're focusing on who are the best 5 at any given time, and that includes Max. Now, another update surrounding Max Scherzer is that he's feeling really good, has been continuing to ramp up his development, his pitching, of course, as we approach spring training, as we approach regular season. He actually might be ready a lot sooner than people think, but we also have details surrounding his contract, and it's set in a structure that is very beneficial for the Toronto Blue Jays. And it's a $1 million, obviously it's a $3 million base contract with incentives up to $10 million based on innings pitched. And you can see it goes from 65 to 155. And if he gets 155 innings, we'd obviously be in a dream scenario here. But the contract was structured great. They obviously brought him back, which is fantastic. It's just the question now remains. Everyone's talking about being a big boy and how everyone knows that they're going to be able to, play based on how their performance is. Some point, someone's going to get upset, whether that's Berrios, whether that's Lauer. Keep an eye out for Eric Lauer being moved and just seeing what his role is. Because again, there were reports flying. They don't go away. Right, that he was upset with not being a starter. He spoke to the media publicly after his first spring training start. Keep an eye out for that. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying that there's a very real possibility where things get a little bit dicey. But regarding Max Scherzer, they can, of course, and they will have to make a move. More moves are coming. It could be as simple as Jake Bloss and Santander, or it could go a little bit deeper. Now, speaking about really exciting news and going deeper into conversation, Kazuma Okamoto had another great game yesterday. Now, obviously, he has been a delight to watch this spring training. And against one of the top pitching prospects in the entire world, and Thomas White, he laced 104.9 mile per hour exit velocity double down the left field line. And one of the biggest questions was about how guys like Murakami are going to adjust the velocity, how guys like Kazuma Okamoto, who are in the Pacific Rim League, are going to adjust to MLB pitching and speed. Okamoto has had absolutely no problem thus far, and if he can keep this up, his team is looking really good. And overall in spring training, the team's looking good. You had Eloy Jimenez. He went 0 for 2 yesterday, but he's been looking really solid. Video coming at him probably later tonight or tomorrow morning. He's looked really good. You have guys like Dalton Varsho crushing baseballs. Like, if everyone continues to play well, yes, there are regression candidates, right? But you all of a sudden can put together a lineup here, especially if you keep Eloy Jimenez in the team. But regardless of that, a Jesus Sanchez is somebody who people aren't talking about enough. The team is all of a sudden very good. You're going to get Varsho in a lot of games against left-handed pitching this year, but all of a sudden, folks, you're in a very, very good position here to take care of business. And it's going to be exciting to watch, especially what happens. Again, keep your eye out on Eric Lauer, but moves are coming. They're going to be moving Lauer to the bullpen probably. We're going to be seeing Max Scherzer come around. Keep an eye out for another bullpen arm potentially, being on the horizon here because they made a ton of additions. But man, oh man, does this Max Scherzer signing keep getting crazier and crazier, and more developments keep happening by the day, even though on the surface, it's a pretty simple move. Thank you guys for watching. You guys are absolute beasts of the support. We'll see you later.
There are signings that feel like punctuation marks, and then there are signings that feel like a change in tone entirely. Max Scherzer coming back to the Toronto Blue Jays is very much the latter. It's the kind of move that doesn't just tweak a roster, it tilts the emotional balance of spring training, shifts conversations in hallways, and quietly tells everyone in Dunedin that this camp is not a sightseeing tour. This is a competition. And yes, it's about to get uncomfortable. Because the moment Scherzer's name reappeared on that depth chart, the Jays' pitching picture stopped being neat and started being fascinating. The incentives in his deal tell their own story, a contract built on belief but protected by realism, almost daring fate to cooperate. If he gets to the higher innings thresholds, you're not just happy, you're probably playing meaningful baseball in September. If he doesn't, the risk is contained. That's smart baseball. That's a front office with its eyes open. But here's where it gets interesting and maybe a little tense. According to reporting from Ben Nicholson-Smith, the Jays are very seriously looking at moving Eric Lauer into a bullpen role, and you can almost hear the collective inhale. Lauer has made it clear he sees himself as a starter, and frankly, he hasn't been shy about it. Now, suddenly, with Scherzer in the room, that path narrows. Not closes, but narrows enough to make anyone uneasy. John Schneider has tried to strike the right tone, talking about competition, performance, and everyone being adults about it. And I believe him. Baseball clubhouses are full of professionals, but they're also full of pride. If Lauer ends up opening the year in the bullpen, that's not just a tactical decision, it's a psychological one. Does he embrace it as a way to help a contender, or does this become the simmering storyline that eventually forces a trade? The Jays might not have to decide today, but the clock has started ticking. What I do love is how this reframes spring training entirely. This isn't reps for reps' sake anymore. Every outing matters. Every inning is a quiet argument being made to the coaching staff. And for us, watching from the outside, it's compelling theater. If you're enjoying this kind of daily tension and analysis, you know the Blue Jays Report is the place for it. So make sure you're subscribed and along for the ride. The bigger picture here is confidence. The Jays didn't bring back Scherzer to admire him. They brought him back to raise the floor and the ceiling at the same time. There are more moves coming, and not all of them will be comfortable, but comfort has never won a pennant. As March 27th approaches, one thing is clear. This roster is still in motion, and the choices made now will echo all season long. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way.